I should have killed her. That's what they trained me for. That's what the oath meant. But when I stood in that apartment in Brooklyn, gun in hand, watching her breathe in the pale light of a winter dawn, I couldn't do it. And that hesitation, that one merciful second, destroyed everything I was supposed to be. My name is Mark Ellison. I was a CIA officer. Special Operations Division. I hunted enemies of the state. I disrupted networks. I eliminated threats. And for 12 years, I believed every word of it. I believed in the flag. I believed in the mission. I believed that some people had to carry the weight of America's sins so that others could sleep safely at night. But belief is a fragile thing. And when it breaks, it shatters louder than any gunshot. It was November 2002. New York City still smelled like ash and grief. Ground Zero was a wound that wouldn't close. The towers had fallen just over a year before, and the entire intelligence community was operating in a state of controlled panic. Everyone was hunting. Everyone was listening. The FBI, the NSA, the CIA, we all had our nets cast wide, looking for the next attack, the next sleeper cell, the next shadow that didn't belong. I was stationed in Manhattan, running counterintelligence ops out of an unmarked office near the financial district. My team tracked foreign operatives, people who lived double lives, blending into American society while feeding intelligence back to Moscow, Beijing, Tehran. We called them ghosts. Some had been here for decades. Some were raising families. Some had mortgages and memberships at the YMCA, and some were planning to destroy us from the inside. November was relentless. It came down in sheets, turning the streets into rivers of black glass. I remember sitting in a surveillance van on Flatbush Avenue, watching the feed from a camera we'd planted inside a cafe in Park Slope. My partner, Danny Reese, was eating cold pizza beside me, complaining about his ex-wife. The van smelled like stale coffee and cigarette smoke. The kind of smell that clings to your clothes, your hair, your skin, until you can't remember what clean air feels like. That was the night I first saw her. She walked into frame at 9:47 p.m. Long dark coat, wet from the rain. Hair pulled back. No umbrella. She sat alone at a corner table, ordered tea, and opened a paperback novel. To anyone watching, she was just another New Yorker escaping the cold. But I knew better. I'd been tracking her digital footprint for 3 weeks. Bank transactions, phone records, travel patterns. She was careful, almost invisible, but not quite. Her name, at least the one she used, was Elena Markov. She was a graphic designer, freelance, worked from home, paid her taxes, donated to animal shelters, attended yoga classes in Williamsburg. The perfect cover. But Elena Markov didn't exist before 1998. Her social security number was real, but it belonged to a child who died in Ohio in 1983. Her passport was flawless. Her accent, when she spoke, was faintly European, something she explained away as Czech heritage. But the deeper we dug, the more we found nothing. No childhood friends, no college records, no family photos. She was a ghost, and ghosts in my line of work only meant one thing. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. My father was a steel worker. My mother taught elementary school. We didn't have much, but we had pride. Pride in work. Pride in country. When I joined the Army at 18, my father shook my hand like I'd done something honorable. When I was recruited into the CIA 6 years later, he didn't ask questions. He just nodded and said, "Do what's right." Son, I thought I understood what that meant. The CIA trains you to see the world in layers. Surface, subtext, intention, threat. They teach you to read people, like maps, to find the cracks in their stories, the inconsistencies in their alibis. They teach you to be patient, to wait, to watch. And when the moment comes, to act without hesitation. I was good at it. Too good, maybe. I could sit in a car for 16 hours without moving. I could memorize a face in 3 seconds. I could lie so smoothly that I started to forget what the truth sounded like. But they also taught us something else. Something quieter. Something they never said out loud, Dot. They taught us that empathy was a liability. We had a file on Elena Markov, or Katya Morozova, as Moscow knew her. It was thin at first. Just suspicions. Financial anomalies. A phone call to a known SVR cutout in Vienna. A trip to Prague that didn't match her client invoices. But then we intercepted a communication. Encrypted. Routed through 3 proxy servers. It took our analysts 2 weeks to crack it. The message was simple. Asterisk, proceed with Phase 2. Infrastructure targets confirmed. Await further instruction. Asterisk, that's when everything changed. Elena Markov wasn't just a sleeper agent. She was operational, active, and whatever Phase 2 meant, it was happening soon. The director gave the order himself. Find her network. Identify her contacts. Dismantle the cell. And if necessary, eliminate the threat. I was assigned lead. It was my operation. My responsibility. I should have felt proud. I should have felt ready. Instead, I felt a strange, cold weight settling in my chest. I started following her more closely. Not just through cameras and phone taps, but physically. I needed to understand her patterns. Her routines. The shape of her life. She lived in a brownstone in Park Slope, 3rd floor, south-facing windows. She walked to the grocery store every Tuesday. She took the subway to Manhattan twice a week to meet clients. She went to a small bookshop on 7th Avenue every Saturday morning. Always bought something. Always fiction. And every night, just after midnight, she would sit by her window with a cup of tea and stare out at the street below. Watched her from a parked car across the road, hidden in the shadows. I watched the way her face looked in the lamplight, calm, thoughtful, almost sad. I watched her fingers trace the rim of the cup. I watched her breathe, and I wondered what she was thinking. That was my first mistake. Wondering. The Cold War never really ended. People think it did. When the Soviet Union collapsed, when the wall came down, when Gorbachev smiled for the cameras and said the word glasnost like it was a magic spell. But the truth is, the war just went underground. The KGB became the FSB and the SVR. The methods changed. The faces changed. But the mission stayed the same. Russia still wanted to weaken America. And America still wanted to contain Russia. What changed was how we fought. No more proxy wars in jungles or deserts. No more nuclear standoffs. Instead, it became quieter. More insidious. Cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns. Sleeper agents living among us for years, decades, waiting for the call. The SVR, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, had perfected the art of the long game. They would send operatives into the U.S. under deep cover, give them new identities, new lives, let them settle in, build relationships, gain trust, and then, when the time was right, activate them. Katya Morozova was one of them. She had been trained at the SVR Academy outside Moscow. I saw her file later, after everything fell apart. She'd been recruited young, 16, maybe younger. Orphaned during the chaos of the 90s. The state became her family. The service became her purpose. They taught her English until she sounded like she was born in Brooklyn. They taught her how to forge documents, how to encrypt communications, how to kill with her hands if necessary. They taught her to be patient, to wait, to blend in so completely that even she might forget who she really was. And then they sent her to America. She'd been here for 4 years by the time I found her. 4 years of living as Elena Markov. 4 years of building a life that wasn't hers. I didn't know it then, but she was tired of lying. Tired of pretending. Tired of being 2 people at once. There was a coffee shop she liked on 5th Avenue, near Prospect Park. I started going there. Not to surveil her. At least, that's what I told myself. Just to be near. To see her in a different context. To understand. She sat at the same table every time. Always facing the door. Always with her back to the wall. Instinct, maybe. or training. She ordered black coffee, no sugar, and she always brought a book. I sat 3 tables away, pretending to read the Times. I listened to her order. I watched the way she thanked the barista, the way she smiled. Small, polite, distant. She never looked at me. But I couldn't stop looking at her. One morning in early December, it snowed. Not the heavy, suffocating kind, but light, delicate flakes that melted as soon as they touched the ground. The city felt quieter that day, softer. She came into the coffee shop at her usual time, shaking the snow from her coat. She ordered her coffee, sat down, opened her book. Same routine, same table, but this time she looked up, and she looked directly at me. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. Her eyes, dark, steady, unreadable, locked onto mine. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I felt exposed, like she could see straight through me, past the cover story, past the lies, into the truth of what I was. Then she looked away. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought she could hear it. I reported the encounter to my team. Said it was nothing. Sighed she didn't recognize me. But Danny looked at me funny and said, "You all right, Mark? You seem off." I told him I was fine. I wasn't. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later. We intercepted another message. This one was clearer. It referenced a meeting, a handoff. Coordinates in New Jersey, near the port. The message mentioned 3 other names, Cody names we'd seen before, linked to other suspected SVR operatives in the tri-state area. This was it. The network. The cell. The order came down fast. Surveillance. Interception. Arrest if possible. Termination if necessary. We set up outside the meeting location. An abandoned warehouse near the docks in Newark. Cold. Industrial. The kind of place where people go to. Disappear. I was positioned on a rooftop across the street. Rifle scope trained on the entrance. Danny was in a van with the tactical team, ready to move in on my signal. And then I saw her, Katya, Elena, whatever her name was. She arrived alone, walking through the snow in that same dark coat. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look scared. She just looked resigned. She met with 2 men inside. The exchange lasted less than 5 minutes. I couldn't hear what they said, but I saw her hand over a small envelope. Saw one of the men nod. Saw them leave separately. I had the shot. Clear line. No obstruction. Danny's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Mark, do we move?" I didn't answer. "Mark?" I watched her through the scope. Watched her pull her coat tighter against the cold. Watched her walk back toward the street, alone. "Stand down," I said. "What?" "Stand down. She's not the priority. Follow the others." There was a long pause. "Copy." I don't know why I said it. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I wasn't thinking at all. I started making mistakes after that. Small ones at first. I delayed reports. I withheld details. I told my superiors the network was more cautious than we thought, harder to pin down. But the truth was, I was protecting her. I didn't understand why. I didn't even like her. I didn't know her. But every time I watched her through that lens, every time I saw her sitting alone in that apartment, staring out at the city like she was a prisoner in her own life, I felt something break inside me. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't some faceless enemy. She was just tired. In January, the intelligence got sharper. We confirmed the target, a power substation in Westchester. If they hit it during peak hours, the blackout would cascade across the grid. Hospitals, airports, financial systems. Chaos. The attack was scheduled for February 10th. The director issued a direct order. Locate Katya Morozova. Neutralize her before she could coordinate the strike. Neutralize. That's the word we use when we don't want to say kill. I went to her apartment on the night of February 8th. I had the access codes. I had the layout. I had my weapon. I waited until 2 a.m. when the street was empty and silent. I picked the lock, moved through the hallway like a shadow. The apartment was dark, except for a faint glow from the bedroom. She was asleep. I stood in the doorway, gun in hand, watching her breathe. She looked peaceful. Younger, somehow, vulnerable. I raised the weapon. My finger rested on the trigger. All I had to do was pull. But I thought about my father. About the way he looked at me when I joined the service. About the word honor. And I thought about her. About the life she'd been forced into. The choices she never got to make. The person she might have been. If the world had been different. I thought about what it meant to do the right thing. I realized I didn't know anymore. I lowered the gun, and I woke her up. She didn't scream. Didn't panic. She just looked at me, calm and clear-eyed, and said, "You're CIA." I nodded. "Are you going to kill me?" I was supposed to. She sat up slowly, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. "But you're not." "No." "Why?" I didn't have an answer. She stared at me for a long time. Then she said, "You don't look like a killer. Neither do you." She smiled, faint and bitter. "We all are in the end." I told her she had 2 hours. To disappear. To run. She didn't ask why I was letting her go. She didn't thank me. She just got dressed, packed a small bag, and walked toward the door. Before she left, she stopped and looked back at me. "What's your name?" "Mark, Mark," she repeated, like she was testing the weight of it. "You just signed your own death warrant. I know." She nodded once, and then she was gone. I stayed in that apartment for a long time after she left. Sat on the floor with my back against the wall, staring at nothing. I thought about calling it in, reporting what I'd done, facing the consequences. But instead, I stood up, wiped down the surfaces, made it look like no one had ever been there, and I walked out. 2 days later, the substation attack never happened. The cell went silent. Katya, Elena, vanished. No trace. No trail. The agency launched an internal investigation. They suspected a leak. A mole. Someone who tipped off the Russians. They never suspected me. But I knew. Danny knew too. He didn't say anything. But I could see it in his eyes. The questions. The doubt. 3 weeks later, I submitted my resignation. Sighed I was burned out. Said I needed time. They didn't argue. I left New York in March. Drove west with no destination in mind. Just drove until the city disappeared behind me, and the world felt open again. I thought about her every day. Wondered where she went. If she was safe. If she ever thought about me, I wondered if she hated me for sparing her. Or if she understood. People think spies are heroes. Or villains. But the truth is, we're just people. Caught between borders. Between loyalties. Between love and duty. I used to believe I knew the difference between right and wrong. I used to believe the mission was clear. But standing in that apartment, gun in hand, watching her breathe, I realized the world isn't that simple. Sometimes, the enemy is just someone who was never given a choice. Sometimes mercy is the bravest thing you can do. And sometimes, doing the right thing means losing everything you thought you were. I don't regret it. Not the choice. Not the cost. Because in that moment, I stopped being a weapon. I stopped being a tool. I became human again. And maybe that's the only truth that matters. Haven't seen Katya since that night. But I think about her often. I think about the way she looked at me in the doorway. The way she said my name. I think about the life she's living now. Somewhere far from here. Somewhere safe, I hope. And I think about the man I used to be. The one who believed in the mission. The one who followed orders without question. That man is gone, and I don't miss him. They say love can move mountains. But for me, it moved borders. It erased everything I once believed in. It left me standing between two worlds, belonging to neither. But I'm still here, and that has to mean something. There's a photograph I carry with me. Not of her. I never had one. But of the city. New York in winter, snow falling on empty streets, lights blurred through the haze. I took it the night before I left. I look at it sometimes and remember what it felt like to stand at the edge of something. To choose mercy over mission. To let someone live when the world said they should die. It cost me everything. My career, my identity, my sense of purpose. But it gave me something too. It gave me back my soul. I don't know if Katya ever thinks about me. I don't know if that night meant anything to her. Maybe it was just survival. Maybe she forgot my face the moment she walked out that door. But it doesn't matter, because I didn't let her go for her. I let her go for me. The world is full of ghosts. People who live double lives. People who carry secrets too heavy to speak. People who make choices in the dark and live with them in the light. I was one of them. And maybe I still am. But I'm not running anymore. I'm just living. Day by day, mile by mile, trying to figure out what comes next, trying to understand what it means to be free. The rain still reminds me of her. The smell of wet pavement. The sound of it tapping against windows in the middle of the night. I think about that apartment in Brooklyn. The way she sat by the window every night, staring out at the city like she was waiting for something. Maybe she was waiting for me. Or maybe she was waiting for the courage to walk away. I live quietly now. Small towns. Cheap motels. Places where no one asks questions and no one remembers your name. I don't have much. A few clothes. A car that barely runs. A notebook where I write things I'll never send. But I have something I didn't have before. I have peace. Not the kind that comes from closure. Not the kind that comes from forgiveness. But the kind that comes from knowing I did the one thing that mattered. I chose to see her as human. And in doing so, I became human again. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I pulled the trigger that night. If I'd followed orders. If I'd been the soldier they trained me to be. Maybe the world would be safer. Maybe the mission would have succeeded. But I wouldn't be here. I'd be somewhere else. Somewhere hollow. Somewhere cold. And I'd be carrying a weight I could never put down. There's a line I read once, in a book I found in a gas station, somewhere in Montana. It said, "We are all just walking each other home." I didn't understand it at first, but I think I do now. We're all lost. All of us, trying to find our way through the dark. And sometimes, the only thing we can do is help each other survive, even if it costs us everything. I don't know if Katya is out there somewhere, living a new life, carrying a new name. I don't know if she's happy. I don't know if she's safe, but I hope she is. I hope she found a place where she doesn't have to pretend anymore, where she doesn't have to be two people at once. I hope she found home. As for me, I'm still searching, not for redemption, not for forgiveness. Just for meaning, for a reason to keep going. And maybe one day, I'll find it. I should have killed her. That's what they would say. That's what the oath demanded. But I didn't. And I'd make the same choice again, because in the end, we're not defined by the missions we complete or the orders we follow. We're defined by the moments. We choose mercy over duty, humanity over doctrine, love over fear. I was a CIA officer. I hunted enemies of the state. I believed in the mission. But the mission broke me. And the woman I was sent to kill, she saved me. Not by dying, but by living. That's the story I never told, the secret I carried for years. The truth that cost me everything. But it's mine. It's real. And it's the only thing I have left. So if you're listening, if you're out there, Katya, I want you to know something. I don't regret it. Not for a second. You weren't just a target. You were proof that even in the darkest places, even in the middle of a war, there's still something worth saving. And I saved you, not because I was weak, because I was finally strong enough to see the truth. The rain is falling again tonight. I'm sitting in a small room somewhere west of everywhere, watching the drops streak down the window, and I'm thinking about that night in Brooklyn. The way you looked at me when I told you to run. The way you said my name. Mark. Like it meant something, like I meant something. I'm still here, still walking, still carrying the weight. It's a weight I can live with, because I know I did the right thing, even if the world never knows, even if I'm the only one who remembers. That's all I have. That's my story. The story of the man who couldn't pull the trigger. The story of the spy who chose love over loyalty. Story of two people who met in the dark and gave each other one last chance to be human. And that's enough. It has to be. Because it's all we get. One moment. One choice. One chance to do the right thing. Even when it costs everything. I took that chance. And I'm still here. Still breathing. Hoping that somewhere out there, she is too.